You are now tuned into the Panther Nation podcast.
And here are your hosts, Rashad Beard and David Rose.
All right, what's good, everybody? Welcome to the Panther Nation podcast. We got Rashad and Dave, and today we have a special guest. We've got the guy that runs One Panther Place on Twitter. He is the man. If you are not following him on Twitter, he's one of the best follows. He's got some good film analysis, got some good Panther history. And he's also the host of the Roar podcast, along with Billy Marshall. We've got John Ellis here. Welcome, sir.
Hey, Rashad, David, what's going on? This is fun. This is good. I apologize. I am, you might actually be a good thing for some of your viewers here. You're only going to be able to see the polished face there of John Ellis live from a broadcast. Right now, I'm in the car at Ingles grocery stores, and I've got no light in the car, and we're going to make this thing work. But you guys are too kind to have me on, man. What a week it's been in Carolina, man. What a week.
Absolutely. Yeah, man. It's been good. It's been crazy time. So first of all, we appreciate you joining us. I know you're in the parking lot right now. You're taking the time out. And we've had some scheduling issues. So again, it's all good. Again, there was no rush in getting this done, but we definitely appreciate you coming on just to talk a couple things. And I think last time we spoke on Twitter, I said, hey, we might as well just push it back a little bit, give us more time to talk about these free agents. And boom, what do you know? We got all these free agents to talk about. So it lined up perfectly. So
right.
The first question I've got is, what do you think about the 5 or 6 signings that we've done so far? We've addressed a little bit of the offensive line, a bunch of the defense, even added a wide receiver to boot. So what are your thoughts on the complete pickle and a corner? Yep. So what do you think of the class we've signed so far, free agent class?
Yeah, you get a corner in there. I mean, I said we can get to that in a minute, but the ones that stick out to me, obviously, were those big 3 they signed on defense yesterday. We talked about Perryman. Guys, I had looked at some tape on Perryman over the years, just as an observer. I know Thomas Davis had played some ball with him, and he always impressed me with his run stopping. He's stout, and he's got that fight. He's got that Sam Mills look about him. He gets low to the ground, doesn't get pushed back. He's been hurt. There's been some injury issues, but I love his physicality. I just think he's going to be tremendous. Hassan Reddick.
Yep.
Was one of those things we had talked about on the podcast. I know you guys have talked about it as well. Matt Rule guy, Temple, obviously. I was a little stunned they made that happen. Now, some have said, this could be in replacement of Burns if he's traded. I don't think they're going that direction, guys. I think they're going to line them both up on the edge, get after it. And I think Burns, honestly, is one of those guys, whether this Watson trade does happen or not, I'm getting the sense that Burns is very much off limits in terms of any trade package. So it's going to be fun to watch the 2 of those guys getting after it. Obviously, you get some depth at corner there. I thought David Moore was a good signing. That came out of the blue today, too. And then I had mentioned some veteran names in the slot that might be good, like a Willie Snead. But David Moore is one of these guys that Seattle has sort of stuck in there over the years. We've seen it in Carolina, right? That 4th down play in 2018 against Cornell. Yeah. He has the ability. I think the stat we posted earlier was 6 of his 13 career touchdowns have come from 30-plus yards. So obviously that tells me that, number one, they're wanting somebody that can get down the field on the perimeter and can make the contested catch. And number 2, they're going to have to find a quarterback who consistently makes those throws, because I'm afraid that a guy like Dave Moore is going to be better suited for a guy like a Deshaun Watson or a Justin Fields or a Wilson or a Lance. Bridgewater does some really good things at times, guys, but I think you've heard my analysis. I just think the deep stuff, they are worn down with the struggle there. But I think so far it's been a really good, couple of days here. They added Fox, the defensive tackle, as well, who is really – to me, I like to look at snap count versus production. So a guy like Moore, Fox, these are guys, and I had the same hope for Weatherly too last year. So it could be fool's gold. But these 2, I think, have produced at a higher level with lower snap counts than usual. If you're playing about half the snaps and you're getting as much production as a guy like a Mario Addison or such, hey, you can't argue with that. That's good football by Fox there. So I'm real happy with what they've done here. This is the first day with the two offensive linemen. There's some question marks about not necessarily the money, but just F line, elf line.
Yeah, I can't say it either. I can't
Elf
say it
line.
either.
F this line. F this line, man.
Right, right.
Hopefully we're not saying that. Pat was a.
That's what we're going to be saying if you don't play well, though. That's what we're going to be saying, man.
That's the first thing I said. I said, shit, it's going to be F this line if he doesn't play well.
Oh,
look,
man.
he's a very good interior lineman, was a rookie of the year from the Pro Football Writer Association. I think second team in 2017. But it's sort of been downhill since. Hopefully they can regenerate him. I don't think either one of these guys are sort of your key cog starters long term. It's sort of like a John Miller type of deal, Chris Ray type of deal. And then with Irvin, I mean, he's an interesting guy too. He's bounced around a little bit, very talented. I know they would like to play him at left tackle. I think he's better at guard right now, but we'll see what they do.
Yeah. No, I think you summed it up. You summed up the class, the free agent class so far pretty well. One follow-up question about the defense, being that we have Hassan Reddick, we have a Brian Burns, and the type of guys that we are signing, do you think that leans towards more three-man fronts? How do you expect us to move forward schematically on the defensive side of the ball?
No, that's a great question. I think what Phil Snow is, a lot of things I had questions about coming into this, regime. One of them was Phil Snow's experience on the pro level. But I think what we learned here was defense is defense. Big 12, Pac-12, NFL. It's all about devising a plan that can, number one, fit your players the best. And number two, that can give opponents a little bit of a different look. And Aaron Rodgers had even said it looked a little different. Everything looked different last year when they played a Phil Snow defense. What will they do? I think in base, they'll run a lot of 4 down, and especially in terms of, you're getting the run game. They're facing a team that's in, 21 personnel like the Saints trying to pound the ball. They're going to play 4-man, obviously, but in situational football, they can go 3 down, mug chin up in the line. I don't know if you're doing that much, playing more safety this year, but with the addition of Reddick, you've seen the tape on Reddick. He can play everywhere. That Giants game where he had 5 sacks, I think he was in 5 different spots, guys. He was mugged up on one, on the edge with his hand in the dirt in the other. Very versatile. So I think what you'll see is a lot of 3-man stuff. But what they did last year, this is why I was disappointed by F.A. Obata's, I guess, potential departure now. Fox makes up for that, with coming in from his end. You've got a situation where last year when they were in long passing downs, they would get teams behind the chains a little bit occasionally. Tom Brady would get in that funk in that first game. Aaron Rodgers comes to mind. They were able to put FA at 3 technique inside. Yep. And they got some real good penetration with 4 guys. I call it the NASCAR package. Perry Fuel designed that with the Giants back in the Super Bowl run, where they had JPP and OC and all those guys on the line. Basically 4 speed guys or 3 speed guys in a tackle. I think they'll try to simulate that again with the versatility they have, because that's a really good way in today's game to get pressure. But what is it, a 3-4, 4-3? It's really, we're kind of getting past those terms, guys. It's
right.
So
no, you're right. You're right.
You're
absolutely right.
They will have, with Derek Brown able to command things in the middle on any given passing down, they can run 3 alignment there and still put 7, 8 in coverage. But Phil likes to heat people up, so I think you'll be seeing a lot of blitzing too.
I like that. I like the aggressiveness. Bring the blitzes, man. I'm here for it. Now, one thing I do have, I like more of a comment than a question, but I do like the fact that we're going after these young guys. I took a look at the roster, and I think we have 3 guys over the age of 30. Yep. And we just signed one of those guys today. So I love the fact that most of these guys are young. I mean, you look at David Moore, 26, Cam Irving's 28, Pat Eflin is 26. Hassan Reddick, I believe he's 26, 20, something like 28, something like that. But they're all very young guys, and they're all on short-term deals. There's flexibility within these deals. It allows us to be a little bit flexible. We're not tied to anybody long-term. So I really like what Scott Fitter has done this offseason so far. I really like it a lot.
Yeah, I agree. Just to add to that, I think that Fitterer last year obviously was not here, and one thing I was curious to see when they did bring a new GM in would there be sort of a philosophical shift in terms of roster structure, in terms of aggressiveness. I think with roster structure, That's more of a Matt Rule thing. I think he's going to determine the scheme fit type of guys he wants, the athletic type of guys he wants. When it comes to general philosophy, though, and we've seen this with their pursuit of Matt Stafford, we've seen it with their very heavily reported pursuit of Deshaun Watson, and other quarterbacks as well that have been mentioned in this quarterback frenzy. I think Fitter, and I really believe this, guys. I've talked to Sam Farmer from the LA Times, did an interview with him. He's known Scott since his high school days. And one thing we had talked about was over the 20-year span Scott was in Seattle. He learned from Mike Holmgren, did some work with Jim Mora, also worked extensively with Pete Carroll and John Schneider. And I think what they're trying to build is a Schneider-Carroll combo here with Matt and Scott. But I do think what was said from the owner's mouth, you got to take it with a grain of salt in year one. At least in year one of, year one of Matt Rule, because Tepper's been here for a few years. Right. But I think that was his way of saying, look, it might take 5-6 years for this thing to get steady. I never bought that. I still think in 2 years they can be competing for a division title. Maybe this year, depending on their quarterback. But I like the fact that there's a plan 2 years in a row now. They're fitting guys in based on age, based on, their future growth potential, and they're cutting out the fat. And I hate to see that again, but guys like Gerald McCoy, Bruce Irvin, I love those guys. I love Bruce Irvin. I thought he would have been a guy.
Oh, we do too. I love Bruce Irvin. I can't let you hold on. I can't let you say anything bad about Bruce Irvin. Don't say it, John.
I won't.
All right. I can't let you say anything.
Bruce
all right, go ahead.
Bruce and I talk a lot on Twitter, and his film. Let me tell you where I got to know Bruce a little bit. His tape at 19, I would study that stuff nonstop because I was so sick of this team losing. I was saying, who out there is busting their ass every snap? And Bruce was the guy, playing hurt, on the edge, doing his thing. But obviously, it's a business, and I think he was happy to get back to Seattle. Hopefully he gets healthy and moves forward. But I like the fact that they are getting younger, but better. We saw with Tahir Whitehead. Age doesn't necessarily equate to good situational football and steady.
At least you mentioned his name, because we don't mention his name.
Well, there's no 52 in town, baby.
Exactly. All right, John. So you've mentioned quarterback several times, and I've got to get your thoughts. And I know I know because I follow you on Twitter. I know how you feel about Teddy Bridgewater. Again, here we are. I'd say Teddy Bridgewater supporters. I would say that Teddy Bridgewater is a capable quarterback. Of all 32 starting quarterbacks in the league, I think he is a capable starter if given the right scenario. Obviously, I bring up Bomani's quote all the time about being a quarterback that can't lead a bad team. He's a solid quarterback, but he can't lead a bad team. And I think that's kind of where we were. And I think the 8 games, I think that's a little bit overstated. I think there was a couple situations where he got us back in, and we couldn't quite fill it in.
Sure,
but I know I'm not so blinded that I don't see Teddy Bridgewater's weak. He has clear weaknesses, and I get it. But where do you think we go with the quarterback? There's so much flying around right now. If you had to put money on it right now, you had to bet your life savings. What do you think we do with the quarterback situation?
If it was 2 days ago, I'd say Watson. I don't know what the hell's going on down there. Honestly, I don't know what that situation is. I'm reluctant to even go too deep on it because it's sensitive, and I've known people who have known Deshaun for years down here in Clemson. We're just all, it's stunning. We'll see. And that's not to say that I wouldn't make that trade still and have faith in the guy and work through it with him and understand what the deals are.
Of course.
We just have to see how that plays out. He could be, dealt with the league at some point, discipline wise. It's a stunning development, but back to Bridgewater. I'll say this. Everything you said is correct. He is, and I like Babani, his perspective on that as well is spot on. You can't rely on Teddy to take a bad team and make him into a contender. I think what was disappointing from my end in watching Bridgewater what was not so much the general results between the 20s. I mean, this is what we saw on tape throughout. There was going to be a lot of quick processing. That's his game, and there's value in that. A lot of guys, and Cam was not very good at this at times, guys. There were times where Cam would rocket those Texas routes in, those slants in, sail them over, and completion percentage doesn't mean a lot to me, but situational accuracy does. Right. Cam didn't have that towards the end all the time. But what Cam was able to do athletically and then with the deep ball when he was right was far superior, I think. Now, Teddy, between the 20s, you look at his production, very steady, very good. Didn't do a lot in terms of turning the ball over. What I had a problem with was down the stretch. It was the stuff that we relied on Teddy to be at his best at. His strengths sort of looked weak, meaning the processing, not reading things as quickly. There was a corner route in Green Bay that he missed wide open to Robbie. There was obviously the fumble going over the top when he should have gone low. They rushing to the line in the first place. I mean, they put a lot of trust in Teddy. You can see the way a offense schemes this stuff up, and the way Teddy, unlike a lot of quarterbacks out there, does a lot of pre-snap adjustments.
All right.
And Brady put a lot, and he is the kind of guy that can handle that. Not a lot of quarterbacks can take that on. That's why you get a veteran like Teddy. But that kind of stuff did not work late in the season. He was not making good calls. He was not finding the right guys in terms of the routes that were open. He was very reluctant. He always has been reluctant to pull the trigger on some throws that I know he can make. He's got a rocket when he lets it loose.
Right.
He's just not. The ball doesn't pop off like a Mahomes. It's a very high bar there. But I'm not. I'm like you guys. I'm not totally on the other side either. I'm very nuanced here, and I like the fact that he did things out of structure. I mean, he scored 6-7 rushing touchdowns. That was unexpected. One play in Kansas City where he dove for the 4th down conversion, and I think he rallied his teammates with that. And to your point, some of these 8 losses at the end, he was getting them back in before they lost at the end. But the Minnesota game, the Denver game, obviously what happened in Green Bay with the just situational stuff that you rely on a veteran for. On time, at the end of the day, we can talk all day long about the little things that Teddy could do better.
Right.
The counterpoint to Bomani's point I would make is if you have a very good team, and he was young too, but they go back to 2015 where he had Adrian Peterson in his prime. They had a great defense. They had a great offensive line, good receivers, and I think, threw maybe 15, 14 touchdowns. And it's not everything. I get that. Part of it's being a field general and controlling the tempo. But if you have a chance to have somebody who can do that at that level, because I do think these guys in the draft can be field generals to that level. I really do. I think Deshaun Watson is one of the 2 or 3 best quarterbacks that's played in this game in the last 10 years. I really do, in terms of the complete package. Those are upgrades immediately.
Agree. 100% agree.
The only problem I had with the Bridgewater thing, honestly, it has nothing to do with Teddy. I think they could have done a better job with that contract to say, okay, you know what? It's been a minute. We want to give you a chance here. Let's give you a 1-year deal. Or let's give you a 2-year deal with an opt-out in the first if something does go south. And I tell folks all the time that get upset with me for not being nicer about the Bridgewater thing. And look, I try not to be violent. There's times we joked about it. It's honestly, it's just these guys are all making millions. They're good with it. But of course, the fact of the matter is he's a professional. People love him around the league. You talk to Vikings fans. They're like, dude, bring him back here. And I'm like, okay. They love him up there. But
so do Saints fans, by the way.
Saints fans love him too.
Yeah. It's a production business, and he had a lot of good weapons at his disposal. McCaffrey was hurt, obviously, but he had Joe Brady's system, which was supposed to be the edge. And I think, again, if people are upset with me, go talk to the owner. The owner's the one that tried to trade him to Detroit to get Matt Stafford. So I think the entire franchise understands, as well as Teddy, that this is a business. Decisions happen fast, and if you're not getting it done, look, Matt Rule was very transparent late in the year. In the middle of the Green Bay game, he talked to, I think, Andrea Kramer and said, that's not good football by Teddy.
Right.
I was shocked to hear that. I've never heard a coach call his quarterback out in the middle of a night game. So Matt's a different cat. He's very demanding. I think we're all getting to know all these people, too. It's been such a long time since we've had a reset. New quarterback, new coach, new staff.
Yep.
But, yeah, I think they've got to find themselves a better option moving forward if they want to be in a situation where they're rolling and competing with the best of the best. But to be fair, I'll be fair. I'm always fair. How many games did they go without allowing a punt on defense last year? Remember that?
Yeah, for sure.
The defense could not get off the field. That fell on Teddy. So
right.
it goes hand
and so,
in hand. I totally
bingo.
that, but
Man, yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So people tend to ignore that entire point, how bad the defense was playing early in the season.
Oh my God.
Yes, they ended up turning it around for sure, but it ended up flip flopping. The offense was playing well the first half, well, better in the first half of the season. Then things just kind of fell off a cliff for the offense, and the defense got better. I just think we gotta work on putting it together. I think year two, I think is going to be a little bit better. I'm assuming Teddy Bridgewater is going to be around year 2. I don't know. Obviously, things could change rather swiftly. Teddy Bridgewater is going to be around year 2, and maybe we bring in somebody to sit behind him. I don't know.
I'll add this real quick, and this is a cap thing as well. So they're not going to restructure. They're not going to do a restructure with Teddy because Teddy would raise his hand and say, "Why the hell would I restructure?" Because I'm going to keep every penny I've got in this deal because honestly, I don't know what you're doing with me. So there's going to be no restructure on Teddy. I don't believe the guys like Shaq and all those guys. They understood what their role was here. They were willing to go ahead and make that, concession and push money back. And you can window dress this cap thing. But in Teddy's case, it's kind of firm. And here's why. There's a pretty big cap hit. It's up to 20-ish million if they cut him pre-June 1st. Yeah. If they trade him, there's almost no hit. That's why they're trying to get this thing done trade-wise so they can level out with the cap, still add good players around them. And I think by the nature – by how aggressive they've been so far in free agency, you pick up some context clues there a little bit and say, you know what, maybe they know something we don't in terms of, okay, we know we're going to go get a rookie quarterback, or we know we might have a trade in place in principle with one of these teams like Houston. You just never know.
Right.
So I think Teddy, if they can't pull off a trade with Watson or choose not to, he'll have to be back. And I think that's what Matt Rule has talked about openly, that, Teddy is a competitor. He's tough enough to handle this. This is one of the reasons we brought him in the first place, is he's been used to this. And Matt is not going to spare anybody any love if they're not performing. Get used to that. It's one of these things I've talked about with guys, players, coaches, and in the media that cover this guy, but mostly players, former players, current players, that Matt is no nonsense. He's very fair, but it's a far departure from Ron Rivera. He's going to very vocally tell you, and the media at times, a lot like Parcells and Coughlin used to do. A couple guys he looks up to very, very much. He's going to let you know and let people know that this ain't good enough, and you got to get better. And that's sort of a motivational tool, I think, for Teddy as well. So how does he respond to that? If Teddy comes back and plays this year with these weapons and puts up 30 touchdowns, 10 picks, they go to the playoffs, I still think you got to look forward and make a change at some point because you're still stuck in that Alex Smith rhythm you were before Mahomes.
The thing is, John, you can do an Alex Smith-like move like the Chiefs and draft your guy in 2022 and go get your guy that you want in 2022.
That's it. And that, David, that was the plan to begin with. Everything changed the minute that they started flirting with Matt Stafford. Yep. And I can go back a little bit and say, maybe things changed a little bit. I told people on our podcast and on these Q&As I do at night and on Twitter, everybody's whining about, tanking. Let's tank. Come on, John. We're going to lose them all.
I hate that.
The guys,
I hate it, man.
You don't talk to players. You ain't been in the locker room enough to know that it's going to happen in the NFL. And this is Bridgewater's audition. He's coming back off the injury. His last half of the season, he's going to either make or break his stay here in Carolina. And I do believe, unfortunately for him, those last few games, as I predicted, I didn't predict he would play poorly. I thought he'd play well. But I did predict that if it didn't go well, they wouldn't waste a lot of time. And here we are. We're actively talking about them being one of the leaders in the clubhouse, one of the biggest trades in NFL history, guys. If it goes off, that's how desperate Dave Tepper, I believe, and he's the one driving this, is. From what I've been told, I guess this is a pretty solid source, Dave just doesn't want to do this anymore in terms of game manager quarterback. He doesn't. I don't know how much he had on the Bridgewater decision. Obviously, nothing goes by his desk without his approval, but I think he just trusted his guys all the way last year. So let's do it your way. Let's see how it goes. And Bridgewater did not necessarily meet his standards, I don't believe. But he's not the guy at the end of the day that's going to coach the team, but he writes the checks. So who runs what? We'll have to see. It's going to be very revealing.
Yeah, no, and I agree with you. I think that if they stick to the patient plan, the whole Rome wasn't built in a day thing. If they stick to that, I think they're going to be in pretty good shape. Because, like you said, what if Teddy Bridgewater comes out and throws 30 touchdowns next year? What if he's a good chess piece? You can then draft your quarterback and then pull a real Alex Smith and trade him, and then you're in really good shape. But I think you got to practice a little bit of patience here. And again, if you have the opportunity to get Deshaun Watson, you absolutely, given all the other legal stuff aside, because I don't know anything. I won't speak on that just because I don't know anything about it, and I'm not in no place to judge anybody, or nor did I have any kind of facts behind it. But if you have the opportunity to get a Deshaun Watson, that never happens. Franchise quarterbacks don't come on the market that young, so you have to go after it. You have to make that decision and make it happen and do what you got to do to get him. So I have no problem with that. But if Deshaun aside, I think you got to practice a little bit of patience here, which brings up my next question. Given all things, let's say Deshaun Watson that trade does not happen. We're sitting here with Teddy Bridgewater. We're going into the 2021 draft. What are we doing at 8? Are we moving up? Are we standing pat? Are we going to continue to build, or are we going to trade up to get a Justin Fields?
I think you've got to get your quarterback this year, no matter what. And I think if it's Watson, great. Now look, they've got a lot of needs at 8, and if you start drafting for, there's a sentiment out there. It's sort of a cliche. You never draft for need. Well, sometimes you do. And some of the best football minds around the league will tell you that's horse crap. There are times where we have drafted for need in the NFL, and it has worked out beautifully. We needed this guy. We got him. It worked out great. Now, if they're in a situation where they're at number 8 and they wait to number 8 because somehow there's a run on offensive linemen or wide receivers, and then Lance is sitting there. Maybe I don't see Fields or Wilson dropping at all, but some have suggested Fields might. I think it's lazy analysis. I think Fields is going early. I think he's going to be great. I think Lance is the only guy that can be there at 8. Mac Jones is not in my equation. He's a good quarterback, but he's not high first-round material. Kellen Mond, good player too. Might sneak there in that middle first round. But I think if Lance is there at 8, I feel confident in his ability as a pro-style quarterback. He's got the rocket of an arm. He's got a great mind. I've seen his interviews. I've heard some stuff from coaches up there about just the processing is off the charts. For a guy who hasn't played a lot of football, obviously, you worry about competition level. That's always a concern. But at the end of the day, if he's got the tools, he's got the makeup, he's got the ability to run under center, run play action effectively. That's a big deal. You're not running out of gun every play and running one read. You're running multiple reads. And if you look at his tape, it's just very impressive. He looks like a Steve McNair out there. He's got a Donovan McNabb throwing motion. Even the over-the-top motion reminds me so much of McNabb from the old days. But that contact balance in the open field, his ability to make people miss. I know that, people talk about Cam in that light that, well, if you run too much, you're going to get hurt. Well, Cam's problem was not running. Cam's problem was getting blown up in the pocket and chasing down interceptions. That's how he got hurt. So I think if you protect yourself, you slide, you take good care of yourself. He's not built like Cam. He's not as big, so I don't think he's going to take, that kind of impact. But he can get you those hidden yards that you need. And Bridgewater tries to do that at times, but Bridgewater, his strength is processing, staying in the pocket. I think you need an athletic guy. That's why I don't like Mac Jones as much. Yeah, guys, I like a lot of what's in the first round, too, in terms of offensive tackle. I mean, you've got Darisaw, you've got Sewell, you've got some guys that can be a game-changing presence for you. So that's still very unsettling to me that they're going into this right now. You can't fix everything. Obviously, they've come a long way since December with their roster development, but there's still a gaping void at left tackle, and it's sitting there staring in the face. They got Moton locked up; he's the right tackle. Will it be Trent Scott? He played pretty well at times. I don't know, man. They've got to get that left tackle short up at some point, and this would be a good time to do it.
I tell you what, John, and I've said it, and I know a lot of the fan base don't like it, but I think we should just take a left tackle at 8 and just figure the quarterback situation out later. We got Teddy on the roster. That's why I'm at.
There's something to be said for that, man. And look, if from my perspective, about half of my analysis is done based on what I think I would do. The other half is based on what I think they would do, meaning the team, based on how they think, how they talk. If they were in better favor, now, again, this could all be a big ruse, but I think they're all honest enough with each other themselves to know that Teddy underperformed down the stretch, and he was hurt, and that's a concern. If they knew that Teddy could give them that full 3-year ride without having a setback or without, having to deal with another injury at the knee and, just the overall reluctancy to make the deep pass, to throw on schedule when it comes to things over 10 yards, I think they would be totally fine with taking the tackle at 8 and giving him the rest of that contract and maybe riding out longer than that. I just don't know how many more chances you're going to get to be in a draft this quarterback heavy in the top 10. To me, there's very rarely 4 guys that go top 10 that you feel can impact your team within the first year. But, okay, and I'll add this. It's a cautionary tale, David. It's a cautionary tale. You guys know all these first-round draft picks for quarterbacks, and how many have worked out? Not a lot. Not a lot.
How many did I predict, Rashad, that'll work out in this class in the
Dave,
first round?
I think Dave said one guy is going to work.
One.
Which one you got?
Oh God, I don't know. That's not my job.
He just picked one.
I'll tell you,
When I hear all these people talk about all these quarterbacks, like, oh, this is the greatest quarterback class ever. This is that, and I'm like,
no, that's hyperbole.
No, it's just gonna be one guy, two at most, but probably just one guy.
Well, I mean,
and it's not gonna be the guy we think it's gonna be. I think people assume it's gonna be Trevor Lawrence. It's not gonna be him.
Think about this: what the media does to people that are very susceptible. And I know you guys aren't. I know you guys well. I've worked around the media all my life, so I'm really keen on what is BS and what's not. The tank for Tua push. Tank for Tua. Tank for Tua. That was a mantra. That was on T-shirts. What happened with Tua?
He fell right to him.
Yeah, and yet he fell right to him. They didn't have to tank. And then when he played, it was okay. He did a pretty good job. But was he lighting things up? No. Was he blowing the door off? No. Who played at the end of the year? Fitzpatrick. So, I mean, I'm just saying, we get so caught in this cycle of, these are the four guys that will be stars moving forward. Lawrence, in my mind, I talked to a scout this week who's been following all these quarterbacks. He's going to go check out Wilson here in a couple of weeks. And he said the only concern he had about Lawrence was frame. Other than that, Lawrence has some components to his game that blow him out of the water in terms of processing, in terms of pocket movement, and making throws left to right, sideline to sideline. I think, to your point, David, he's the only one in my view that I would trade up for in terms of giving up like a Brian Burns type. I mean, I would only give up draft picks to move up in the top three. I wouldn't give up any players at all. You've worked hard to get these young guys on rookie contracts playing well. Deshaun, that's another story. I mean, if this legal stuff works out in his favor and it was all something that never really happened, and obviously the character issues, to me, I've never known anybody. It's stunning. I don't want to over talk about it here, but I know so many people, including some people on his old team in Clemson, that are just, and they would say to me, John, there were some things about him. No, Deshaun is one of the great guys in the league. It just, bar none. It's one of the reasons I've wanted to see him in a Panthers uniform. Making this, mistake, if he did indeed do something wrong, no one's irredeemable. Not at all. But it does put a monkey, it puts a monkey wrench in the plans here in terms of how they go about taking care of this trade. I don't know if this protracts out. I mean, look at all the dynamics here. What does it do to Houston's leverage? What does it do to the other teams?
Bingo.
Do teams start dropping out? And it's just, man, we'll just have to see. If all things were considered back the way they were a week ago, I would give up more to get Watson than I would to move up top three, because you know what you're getting with Watson.
The timing's just interesting for me, man. Like, around the same time they pick up Tyrod, news starts picking up, and I'm like, it's just odd. And like I said, if he did it, he got to do what he got to do. But if it's slanderous, it's shameful.
I'll say that the only thing that would stick out to me, and I'm not defending Cal McNair, I think he's terrible. I think that whole regime, Easter B. McNair, they have run their franchise guy out of town. Not just him, too. Other players have, been very vocal about this whole thing not being. Hopkins comes to mind. It just has not been a very good culture there. They fired their PR director, Andy Pouchich, who was one of the best in the league. That was politically motivated, from what I understand. You can't do that in the pro game, man. You got to be all business. You can't be, having an agenda as an owner, as a Jack Easterby, whatever he does up there. Nick Caserio, I have a lot of respect for Caserio. I think he's a very good football mind. I think he's a fair guy. He's worked with Bill for a lot of years, worked with Ernie Adams up there. He's a good, smart GM that's going to come in and make right decisions. What he's done well, I think, lately is he's been very quiet. They said, look, we're not going to tell you anything. Nobody's making calls. We're not taking calls. And that's a good way to handle this right now. But if somehow, the timing is, I agree with it. It's fishy timing. Apparently the lawyer for these individuals is a McNair neighbor. But then again, if McNair set this thing up, it would screw their leverage. So it's
he could.
It makes no sense.
If he set it up, it would screw his leverage, and he could potentially lose the team.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Some of these conspiracy theories out there are just a little far-fetched. I do think there's some bad blood there between Watson and Cal, but I don't think he's that bad. I think this attorney, he's an interesting character. I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah. So yeah, man, I think, man, we talked about a lot. I think, Dave, you got any more questions? Any more topics?
No, I think you covered the gambit. I mean, the main thing was quarterback and all the great free agents that we picked up. And I stand by this, man. If we, and I said this to Rashad too in the previous show, if we trade up to go get a quarterback, I think the linemen that we got are going to be our starters, man.
Yeah.
And I know the fan base isn't going to be happy about it. So I don't know what your thoughts on long term with those guys being the starters.
Well, I think you raised a really good point there. You look at what's going on in free agency right now. You don't have a lot left to tackle. I mean, there's not. They've already tapped into one with I keep forgetting his name, Irving, the kid who is obviously ping-ponged around a little bit, and he still could end up being a guy that for the money they're paying him, ends up giving him good value at left tackle. It doesn't have to be perfect. I mean, you got a guy, you can get a quarterback in there that has some athleticism, like a Wilson who can do things out of structure fields. He can mitigate that, but that's not a good sustainable product.
Listen, the fan base in Shad does not like that I made that comment last
No. I agree with you. No, I agree with you. I don't like any of these. These guys do not need to be starters, and I think we need to invest. I mean, really, like the last time we've invested in offensive line, especially offensive tackle in the first round, was Otai, right? So we've got to do something here. It needs to be addressed. It's not good. We're gonna end up right back in the Cam Newton situation where we got beat to shit every night. It's not good, man. It's not good. You have to fix it.
We're in such a rough spot, right? Like if you want a quarterback, you're gonna take him with the first pick, whether you trade up for 3 or you take the guy at 8.
Dave, here's what I'll say to that. I agree with you, but here's why they're considered to be in a tough spot now. If the narrative has changed, we're expediting things now. If this was the mindset we had given from on high from the owner that this would take years to get right, we'd all be saying to ourselves right now, you know what? It's going to be ugly. But they're making some moves on defense now. They're adding some pieces. They're adding some bona fide top level guys that can take you places. And even last year they added Robbie Anderson. They added Bridgewater. So it's sort of a half a tank in a way. They're not going full tank here. But I think to your point, if the narrative was still,
you watched Breaking Bad, right?
Oh gosh, yeah, twice.
Never
times.
Go half measure. Always go full.
Mike, yes, no more half measures. Mike Ehrmantraut needs to be our GM. Damn it!
Listen, man.
Oh my God,
half taken. You got to pick which side you on.
They half measured the hell out of last year. That's frustrating.
They did.
They could have built this thing like Jacksonville did and assured themselves. You can't tank in the middle of the season. You got to build your roster around what you want. They wanted to be competitive. They wanted to try to win as many games as they could. And when you get into that, you can't start telling a team or start pouting when they're winning games at the end of the year. You can't lay down against Washington. That's never going to happen.
No, it can't happen.
And you got what you got. You're top 8 pick right now. And to that point, I mean, if they come out of there without a quarterback, I still do think that they're better maybe than you guys do in terms of immediate impact, but I still do believe that it is a risk. There's always a risk with first-round quarterbacks. These guys are very good. I think they can translate in today's game quite well. But to hold them up to the Mahomes candle right now, that's very premature.
Yeah, I mean, we've done a whole study on the quarterbacks and analyzed all the quarterbacks have gone since 2010. And it's just not pretty when you measure them on a franchise level versus a regular starter or backup. It's just not pretty. It's not pretty at all. So, I mean,
totally. Look to your point, 2010. I just want to talk about 2010 for a minute. I'm going to let you talk after this.
No, yeah, sure.
That 2010 draft, or 2011, let me go back to it. 10 was Cam's last year at Auburn. 2011, everybody. You remember Cam was a very late bloomer in terms of getting the number 1 hype. It was all about Blaine Gabbert. It was all about Marcel Darius. Nick Fairley for a while was the guy that Carolina was going to take. Justin Blackman was mentioned. And then, of course, Jake Locker. Jake Locker was considered to be, again, a home run hit for Tennessee. And you see Blaine Gabbert's been a middling, made a good career for himself. He made a good living, made a good coin. Jake was out of the league in a few years. Cam stood the test of time, but people had their doubts up until the draft. And I would say that I had some doubts to some degree as the type of offense they ran at Auburn. But, man, when he came out with Chudzinski, I covered that first camp in Spartanburg, and the way they got ready in a hurry. There was a lockout that year, guys. They put that thing together. It was masterful, the way they practiced. And he came out that first game through for 450 the second week, eventually got in a rhythm. Cam's a special guy. He's hard to find. And I don't know if these guys match that intensity, but we'll see.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. All right, Dave, anything else? Any other questions before we get out of here?
No, I'm good to go, man. Appreciate you coming, John.
Oh, you bet, man. I'm
sorry. All right, John. Go ahead.
Back a little bit. I hate that we had to push it back, but anytime you guys want to do this again, we'll make time. I love talking to you.
No worries. Hey, John, well, let the people know. I'm sure everybody already knows where they can find you, but let the people know where they can find you on Twitter, all that good stuff.
Well, I appreciate that. One Panther Place on Twitter. That's ONE. One Panther, singular, place. You can find me on iHeart Radio tomorrow night at 7:30. You're going to be in the iHeart app or WESCFM.com. We've got the Clemson basketball pregame show brought to you by Ingles. That's not on the network. That's on iHeart leading up to network coverage. Big game for Clemson against Rutgers. They're back in the big show, so we're doing some basketball work for them. Hopefully that's not our last show of the year, but it's going to be a big show nonetheless. Blue Wire. You can check us out at BlueWirePods.com or Apple, Spotify. It's called The Roar. Billy Marshall, myself, have fun every week doing that. And then we got a new pod with Kevin Stewart from WSOC Charlotte and Reggie Walker, who used to play for Penn State. It's Crown Score. You can find that anywhere podcasts are heard.
Nice. So that being said, we're going to let John get up out of here. Once again, appreciate you coming. Good times, and we will check you guys out on the next one, all right? Peace.